So this will be part 2 of doing the ball bounce. Now, you don't want to do any of this next stuff until you have until you've done the translate keyframes and adjusted your tension and ease between all of your keyframes. So this is what I'm working with right now. And also a quick note, as part of, because people asked me about this on the last one, so it's worth mentioning. There is a fair bit of bunching that will happen at the top of your bounces where it'll just go really slow through the top using the ease. And yes, that is kind of annoying. Yes, I am also aware of it though. And there are ways to do it using just a few more keyframes basically. But that would just take a little bit more time than I want us to spend on this assignment. This assignment's more about just practicing. One, sort of getting our mind wrapped around the basic principles of animation, but also just practicing and using the tension and the ease values. So we're just going to roll with how the ease sort of makes it kind of go slow through the top and not really, get too tweaked about it. So just if it does get kind of slow through the top, more so than you'd like, just don't worry about it. So in this case, this is what I'm starting with. Also, it might lag because I have a bunch of things running on my computer. So, but otherwise, good stuff. Now, we are going to be adding rotation to this. We're also going to be adding the squash and stretch. So I'm going to go ahead and start with adding the squash and stretch. Now, this is where using the advanced animation tools matters. Josh, I'll email. I have the email in my inbox thing, so I'll remember to do it before the end of the day. Okay, cool. I'm gonna just want you guys to notice this little plus sign that is on the end of your peg, and it is also on these other layers because there are other things that you can mess with on your drawing layers. But for the peg layer, if you pop this open, you'll notice that there are a list of different keyframe types that would be set on your ball. So in this case, you can see that I have some scale keyframes. I'm not sure how these got in there, but whatever. But also, all of my keyframes are just in the position channels here, right here and right here. So we are now going to be working with the scale, which I'm going to need to clear these out, I think. Let me zoom out before I do that and see if anything screws up. Okay, yeah. So I'm going to be using the scale tool, which looks like the square that has a little arrow on it getting bigger. And because we're going to use that scale tool to elongate and squish or compress and flatten our ball as it stretches and squashes throughout this. So that being said, when you go through to set your keyframes, you need to be actually selected on the main channel of the peg. But you will see the different types of keyframes appearing down here in the scale channels. So at frame 1, I'm just going to hit F6 and keyframe this here. Okay, just at my starting point. And I'm going to go all the way down to the frame before it's hitting the ground. So frame 20 is where my translate keyframe is. And on frame 19, I'm going to squish it, or stretch it out, excuse me. But also, because we need to conserve the volume of our object, it needs to be persistent. I need to, because I've elongated it, I also need to compress it horizontally since I've also stretched it vertically. And so now as it goes from the beginning of my bounce down to here, it elongates. Don't worry about the fact that it's going to look like a bouncing egg for a second. So we have it here, and then this frame here, it is on the ground. So now I'm going to want to basically adjust this back and stretch it out this way. but also compress it this way. So now I have okay. And then essentially it should be rebounding back to stretched as it gets up. I usually set it on the second keyframe after it hits the ground, or the second frame, excuse me, after it hits the ground, just so that it elongates over a period of 2 frames. So I'm going to go back to stretching it out again. Squish it down. So if we go back, you'll see squish, stretch, and then as it gets back to the top of its bounce, it should be reset back to normal. Now in my case, I had keyframes here for it being smaller because I'm not bright, I guess. So my default scale, as you can see, I'm just going to zoom in on here. You can see it's 0.2142, blah, 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 but they're the same value. So for me, I'm just going to copy these keyframes, go out to the frame where it's at the top, so in this case, frame 38, and paste them. Oh, wow. Okay, I'm now seeing these values here are way off. Well, this one is. Let me fix this one. So I gotta go click back on this frame. This is too big. Squish this more this way. Okay, so let's see how that looks. There we go. That looks more accurate. And then it'll rebound back to its round shape. And then you do the same thing again. So I'm just gonna go ahead and take my already copied keyframe and paste it right here, and then just tweak them. So go back to this, stretch it out a little bit, squish it in a little bit, go to here, paste it again, squish it down, stretch it out. Then 2 frames out again, paste this again, stretch it out, squish it in. So let me go ahead and roll it back and let's see how this looks so far. It is going to look like a bouncing egg. Alright, so let's keep it going. So here, again, I'm just pasting my perfectly round keyframes because here, basically the force of gravity is equivalent with its energy momentum going up. So that's why there's no effective force being exerted on it. So then this frame here, paste that, stretch it out, not as much. Should be losing its squash and stretch, or it's the effect of the squash and stretch as you go. And then here on the ground, paste these again, squish it down, stretch it out. And then 2 frames out again, paste it, stretch it out. And squish it in. Go to this frame here, paste it, this frame here, whoops, the frame before it, paste it, stretch it, squish it. That's probably too much. There we go. This frame here, paste it again, squish it down, stretch it out. Go to 2 frames ahead, paste it again, and again, you don't want too much force being exerted on it. All right, Sorry, I'm just thinking about, I think I might run into a problem in a second, but I'm pretty sure I know how to fix it anyway. Okay. So that's round at the top, and then the frame right before it hits the ground. Stretch, squish. My phone's blowing up today. So popular. Oh, that's a little too much stretch. Okay. So then 2 frames ahead of that. Paste that. Stretch it out. Squish it in. Paste this. And then, honestly, at this point, I'm just barely affecting it. Yeah, I think I am going to run into that in a second. Alright, and then at this point I'm not even going to have anything happen because there's basically going to be so little force being exerted. So, alright, so it looks like, let's check out our bouncing egg. Okay, so if I, I'm going to go ahead and real quick. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to tweak the rotation of our ball so that the force we're exerting is actually oriented along the path that we're following. So on frame 1, I'm just setting a keyframe. This frame here, let me zoom in. I just want to rotate my ball so that it's running along the path here. So it's stretching along the path that it's traveled. And then here, I want to just copy my no rotation keyframe, which will be quite helpful for me. Just paste that in there, blam. And you'll also notice that it's not quite touching the ground here. So I'm just going to take a quick detour to the translate tool. So we're doing the cleanup passes on this now that we have the squash and stretch in here. So just to put that in perspective, we've added the squash and stretch. Now we're cleaning it up by fixing the rotations and making sure that if the translate got affected, that we fix that as well. Okay, so we got that going. Switch back to my rotate tool. And we'll do this. So again, we're just going to tweak the path so that it's following where it's bouncing. And then up here we want no rotation, so I'll go paste that in there. And then as it falls again, when we get here, again rotate it so it's following the path. And then here I'm going to paste that the no rotation keyframe. Also take my translate tool, make sure it's touching the ground. Alright. And then 2 frames out again. Rotate it so it's following the path. And then we'll come out to here. Paste that no rotation keyframe. Come out to this frame right before. Rotate it to follow the path again. Here I'm going to paste that no rotation keyframe. And translate to fix it so it's touching the ground. Go 2 frames out again. Rotate so it's following the arc. Then we come out here, paste this in, no rotation. Get here again, rotate. Come right here, paste the no rotate keyframe, push it down. 2 frames out, rotate tool, arc it. At the top, no rotate. Towards the bottom, rotate back to the path. paste the no rotate keyframe and fix it so it's touching the ground again. Did I do that on this one? Yeah, I did. Okay, cool. So we got that. And okay. Then here again, we got to rotate this so it's following the path. Here at the top, no rotate. And then let's see on this one. Yep, I think this is the last one. So then I rotate. Yeah. No rotate. And move it so it's touching the ground again. And then here, one more rotate back to the path, and then no rotate. Okay, so now let's zoom out. Let's take a look at this now that it follows the path. So again, still gonna look a bit like a bouncing egg. Well, not as much actually, because it's stretching the right way. So the one thing that isn't happening though is our ball is not actually spinning in the air. It's just bouncing on its butt. It's basically just doing over and over butt smashes. So what we're actually going to do to have our ball rotate, and because someone will most likely do this and bring it up to me, yeah, you could go ahead and put the rotate on the actual ball drawing, but I want you to not do that. Even as I have this scale keyframe here, please pay no attention to that. That's my bad. Because, again, you should be keeping all of your animated keyframes on a peg. It's much cleaner that way. So I am just going to add another peg onto this ball that is being controlled by the peg above this. So all of this ball peg info is still going to be controlling the ball, but it will be controlling it through this ball peg. Oh, it's master pegged it. Whoops, hold on. There we go. So this ball P _1, I'm gonna rename it rotation because that's all it's gonna do for me. And then so I'm gonna pop this open just so you guys can see what's happening. All I'm gonna do is set a keyframe. Oh, move this into the middle of my ball. Set a keyframe on frame 1. Go to the end, and I'm gonna just spin my ball around a bunch. And so now it has rotation going on the ball inside the peg that's doing the rest of the work. So I'm gonna go ahead and close this up. All right, so you'll see there's just a keyframe on frame 1. And then at the end of my ball bounce, and now this is what it's going to look like. So the ball rotates as it's spinning in the air. I think I'm going to add a little bit more rotation though. So right now it's at -600. I'm just going to put it at -900. You know what? I'm going to be that kind of extra and do -945. Okay, so this is what it looks like with that rotate going on in it. And for those of you that want to be extra, if you select the rotation keyframe, the very first one, you can use one of the ease types where it basically slowly decreases in rotation. So I want this one or this one. I'll do this one. So it has more rotation at the beginning of my bounces and then stops rotating as much. Oof. Okay, that was a little rough though. Let's put it to the lesser one. Let's see how that goes now. So because it's losing energy, it'll be rotating a lot less at the end. Wow, that's really odd. It's not really... Because you also are accounting for friction, stopping the ball spinning for a portion of time at the bottom, which is going to decrease some of its airspeed. I'll take it though. It's not perfect. Like I said, the way to get to perfect would be to spend more time messing with the keyframes, having more deliberate effects on where the speed changes and stuff like that. All things that if you go to do animation in college, you're going to have to do a ball bounce again, and it's going to be way harder than this, because those kind of things will be factors that they will expect you to do, because in your pro you can't cut quarters like I'm asking you to now. And again, that's just because of we don't really need to get that granular. I just want you to practice understanding how these tools work to a lesser extent. Okay, so that is how your ball bounce will end up. It should squash and stretch, rotate while it's spinning in the air, and generally have good timing. And again, don't do any of this stuff until you have your translate keyframes done with your tension affected and your ease type set. Okay, so that is that.